Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show Podcast. I'm Cecil Laird.
And I'm producer Dave.
And I'm Diane Shreve.
That's right, guys. Diane is back again to do this podcast with us, and with good reason, because this podcast we are doing something special. We are doing a spotlight on an actor that we all love that has been in both horror movies, dramas, comedies, sci-fi movies, TV shows, all across the board. He definitely falls into all of these categories, and specifically I was introduced to him through the horror genre, of course, so it fits perfectly that we're going to talk about this gentleman. He is, of course, immensely talented. He's been in the business for years, and he is one of the unsung heroes in a lot of ways, although he does get recognition from those that appreciate the craft of movies.
The man behind the mask.
The man behind the mask, a man behind the mask, because he's definitely one of the best, but he is one of a few, and he is worth his own spotlight. He's worth his weight in gold, honestly. The man is a fantastic actor, from his non-creature or otherwise called face roles to his creature roles. This actor is the best of his craft. So who are we talking about? Why the big rollout? Why the big preamble? Well, because he deserves it. This man's name is Mr. Doug Jones.
Yay!
So you'll have to forgive the pomp and circumstance, you guys, but Doug Jones has been one of my favorites in all of movies for a long, long time. I mean, as you know, if you've listened to the podcast, I've mentioned it a number of times. Fuego and I, in fact, did a podcast not too long ago that was all about our top creature movies. Creature movies have always been my absolute favorite of the horror genre. So, of course, I know who Mr. Jones is. He is a veteran of creature movies, as well as other movies at this point. But I became aware of this gentleman years and years ago, and I would hesitate to even figure out exactly where. Apparently, he was in an episode of a show that I had no idea he was in, which we're basically going to kind of go through his career and why we appreciate him for various reasons. But he has been in so many things that I don't know. I guess maybe we shouldn't launch into that yet. Let's finish the precursor here. Forgive me, I just have so much about this gentleman that I like to say. In fact, the horror show has touched on Doug Jones before when we did our regular and spoiler reviews of the movie called Absentia. He was a role in that was fantastically creepy, and he lent his contortion skills to the film, and it was an awesome appearance. So when I saw him in that, I was very pleased, but I've been following his work for many years, from Hellboy to the Silver Surfer role in Fantastic Four to, of course, his widely acclaimed role in Pan's Labyrinth, because there were more than one, and in many of his films that he's participated in, he's played more than one role. Hellboy 2, another example of such. So let's get into it, you guys. I talked long enough. Dave, what are your impressions of Mr. Doug Jones? Because I know that you've seen a lot of these things that he's been in. You might not be quite as prolific in your knowledge as Diane and I are, but I know you can appreciate the man for sure.
Well, whenever I see a creature in a film, I always return to, the special effects side of it, like putting someone in a suit, the acting, like the design of the suit, so that the person who's wearing it, the actor, can become that creature or effect. And Doug Jones by far is the guy that you go to when it's not going to be CG. He's the guy that can make every suit that he wears, or even if it's not a suit, kind of come to life with not just his face, but his whole body. Mm-hmm. And he brings that sort of like stage presence to all the roles that he plays. And so, like I said, I always look at it from a special effects department going, is there a way that like we can make his jaw like get really big, but do it practical so he could actually do it? And or doing anything when it comes to the head to toe style makeups, like in Hellboy, or anything else that he's ever done where he's in head to toe bodysuits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a deep respect for character actors in general who play specifically, a lot of times you don't recognize who the person really is because they're behind the mask and they're behind a real character. And the best ones, guys like Doug Jones, you don't realize that there's like a person behind it.
Yeah.
And so, it doesn't feel like a guy wearing a suit. It feels like the creature.
It's an interesting double-edged sword or dichotomy, the fact that the really, really good creature actors, or actors in general that just happen to specialize in creature work, if you really put them up against like the George Clooney's and the Brad Pitts, take the makeup off and put them up against those guys, and they could not only hold their own, but in a lot of, if not most cases, surpass these guys because they can not only act with their face, they're just not given a tremendous opportunity to because they're so good with their creature work, but they're so good with their bodies that they can add a whole new dimension to the acting that these other guys, these A-list guys that are only paid for their looks and occasionally their line deliveries, they could, people like Doug Jones could blow them out of the water, scene for scene if they're given the opportunity. So it's nice when they are, and Doug has had his opportunities throughout his career, and we'll get to that. We're gonna kind of do this a little haphazardly rather than go through year by year his filmography. We're gonna talk about some of the stuff we like about him.
If you go through his IMDb, you're like, holy crap, this guy's been in everything.
Yeah, I had no idea he was in this.
He's been in so many sort of like glamorous roles, even though it's like a glamorous role in the sense that he's a character that got
a featured character,
10 hours of makeup or something like that.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's been major characters in all of these really big movies, as well as a lot of really cool indie movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, there's that to his career as well.
Well, I would also just point out that, about half of the work he's done throughout his career hasn't just been creature work either. He has a lot of work that he's done where he's just able to perform, with his face, with his own body.
Yeah, and that's why I say what I say, because I have confidence in that. I love those roles that he does,
And I wish that more people would pay a lot of attention to this, because some of those are some of the best things he's done. But so it's really fantastic to be able to put more recognition on the fact that the people that do these creature works, they are actors. They're not just a guy in a suit.
Right.
That they're extremely versatile in what they do. They have to train very, very hard.
Yeah.
Be able to work for 12 to 20 hours a day, go through all the makeup, wear all that different weight involved. Mm-hmm. And in Doug in particular, his background, you guys were talking about his body movements. I agree, that's definitely a lot of what people think of, and a lot of that comes from his background as a mime. As well as you mentioned earlier, his contortion skills.
Mm-hmm.
So
I could see him as a mime.
Yeah, he did. He started doing a mime troupe when he was back at Ball State University in Indiana. So that is a lot where he learned that acting is more about just than your voice, that you really put your entire body into it. And he really, my favorite thing is that he actually goes into the depth and soul of the character, right? Mm-hmm. He connects with the heart of the character and is able to portray the story in that particular aspect. That's why so many people find his characters so compelling and realistic and believable, is because he, even if it's a creature or a monster, they still have that human quality that you connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like I said, I would say most of the regular actors out there would struggle to be able to do that, because he has to do that with sometimes just his movements and expressions rather than dialogue that he's able to give to get across his motivations and things like that. But yeah, like specifically, you were talking about some of his non-makeup roles. The one that you and I checked out, the love story, the Gods and
Love in the Time of Monsters.
Love in the Time of Monsters. Yes, we watched this. This was a very fun movie, and Doug got to play a non-makeup role, and he was just this really kind of funny character that I don't know. How would you describe him, Diane?
Well, they actually made kind of a joke of it, and they named him Doug. His character was actually his name, but he was also dressed as Abraham Lincoln, and he was kind of I think like a scientist, doctor sort of type in the movie.
But then he would also didn't he beatbox?
He beatboxed
to himself. Yeah, so it was really funny. I was like, wow, that's a side of Doug I've never seen before. So that kind of stuff is really fun to see when you're used to seeing a particular actor do a particular thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you guys should know, the audience, that Diane has a particular insight into the whole Doug Jones universe. She has actually gotten to meet the actor a number of times and actually spend a little bit of time with him on the set of his most recent project, which we will go into. But currently, Doug Jones is in the middle of filming what he possibly might consider his dream role, according to Diane, which I'll let her go into more in depth with you guys. But he is playing Count Orlok in the remake of Nosferatu, the original vampire movie.
Yeah.
So if you guys can imagine someone, the movie, it wasn't a silent movie, right?
No, it was a silent movie.
It was a silent movie.
It was
Okay, cool.
From 1922.
So he has to act out. We get to see one of the greatest, actors do this role that largely calls for acting rather than dialogue. Although he does get to deliver some dialogue, which I'm excited to see how he does, because
it's no longer silent.
Yeah, so it's going to be really cool to see. I'm pumped as hell to see it. But Diane, I'm going to let you take over from here, because you're going to end at your experience with the Nosferatu movie. But why don't we rewind and you tell everyone sort of your history with Doug Jones and how all that goes along.
Okay. Well, I actually first became aware of Doug and his work through the Hellboy films. Just one day.
Was it because you were a fan of Guillermo, or you just happened to watch Hellboy, or you read the comics, or what was it?
It was on Netflix at the time. I think it still is.
Do you remember when? How long ago this was?
3-4 years ago, something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'd seen other works of his, but I didn't know exactly who he was at that time.
Okay.
And I know that a lot of people had told me, because I like action, I like fantasy a lot, and people had told me, you gotta see the Hellboy films.
Sure.
So one day, just bored through Netflix, I saw it, and I thought, I'm gonna watch this. And I saw this blue fish man, Abe Sapien, and I'm watching not just the way he's speaking, but it's the body language that came into this,
the way he held his hand.
just the fins and the slight little movements that were so
he moved
elegant.
like he was swimming, even though he wasn't out of the water. Even though he was out of the water, it was beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful, and it just really spoke to me. And the character was so intellectual, yet seemed very soft and almost had a sense of childlike.
Elegant. He was elegant.
Yeah, he was elegant, but he almost had these childlike abilities, and the fact that he was this empathetic character who could see into other people's feelings and emotions and such. I really connected with the character. When I do that, I like to find out, who exactly is that person that's able to portray that so strongly through a screen, and that's when I started to find out a little bit more about, who's this actor Doug Jones. And the more I learned about him and his life, and not only his very prolific career, but just who he is as a person. Doug is extremely kind and giving and loving and just very friendly, and there's no kinder person really that I've ever met. So once I found out a little bit more about who he was as a person, I was very intrigued, of course, to find out a little bit more about his work. And time went by, and I was like, I have to meet this man, that he's just so fascinating on so many levels. I had the opportunity to originally meet him at a convention called FantasyCon in Utah, July of 2014, I think the year was.
Okay.
absolutely magical experience to meet Doug. I mean, anyone who meets Doug will tell you that he makes you feel really special. You walk away with a lightened, happy feeling because he's just full of just this white light energy. Very uplifting. He'll squeeze your face and cup your chin and call you a precious puppy and play with your hair and everything else. And he will give everybody lots of time to speak with him. He's very kind and caring to all his fans, and loves interacting with people and taking pictures and doing everything. So if anyone ever has the opportunity to meet him in person, it's quite an experience. That he's not just this fantastic, talented actor, and not just this kind person who he is, but just he's so giving with his time and his energy when he actually meets people. So that's part of why I'm really glad that we're highlighting him today, because there's just so many different facets of him that's so interesting and so wonderful to talk about.
Well, and that's one of the things that when I first started learning about him, obviously I don't know why, but it was probably not till Hellboy 2. I think it's because they put Niles Crane as his voice in the first Hellboy, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, that's not that actor in the suit though. I'm like, that's somebody else. But when you find out that, like I said before, the talent that it takes to go beyond using just your face and whatever to act, but to really become the character behind something or with something on top of you, just makes that person probably, just that much more genuine and like in touch with reality, so that they would be more, kind to people. Because a lot of the people who it's all held together by string and magic, are the worst. So, I definitely am excited to hear a lot about Doug Jones tonight.
Yeah, because there's a lot to talk about. So Diane, let's go through. You made a little list of some cool Doug Jonesy topics.
Yeah.
I say we go through those, because that's probably a good way to talk about some of the things that people might be interested in.
Sure. So, I mean, we've obviously already identified that while Doug is very well known as a creature performer, he also has quite a few non-makeup roles too. Non-creature suit roles.
Yeah.
So
and
first,
tons of TV.
and a lot of TV in general. So I say first we should discuss each of our personal favorite creature high makeup roles that he's done, and then our favorite roles that he's done where he's maybe not in a big mask.
Okay. I will. I'll start then. I'm going to start with the non-makeup role then.
Okay.
My favorite non-makeup role for Doug is in a movie called Absentia. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I might have, but he played a role in this movie that was basically about a lady who gradually throughout the movie thought she might be going crazy because things were disappearing in the neighborhood and a lot of things were going weird in this tunnel that she was jogging through on a regular basis. And at one point, she jogs through this tunnel and sees this homeless man laying in the tunnel, and she looks and it's Doug Jones, but it's not actually a homeless man. It's a dude that has been taken to this, that we didn't know at the time, but he's been taken to this other dimension where where we assume that terrible stuff is happening, and he has escaped somehow, and she sees him and he sees her, and he's like, you see me? You see me? And she like freaks out and like takes off and just jogs on by, and we don't know anything about him. And then we go and she sees him one more time and talks to him, and he like brings up this name that she doesn't quite recognize at the time, but she does later on. She realizes that he's like this father of a kid that was leaving flowers at the tunnel because he had lost his father recently, and he had died in this tunnel. He had disappeared in this tunnel, and he was leaving flowers at the tunnel like a grave. And then suddenly Doug Jones appeared and said, "Tell my son, where, I'm here, But she jogs on by and doesn't do anything. And then the third time she comes through and encounters him, it's just his dead body that's in the tunnel, and he's laying all contorted and creepy and just I can't get the image out of my head. Like, he's so good. Like, from that alone, he's so good. But his desperation in this role and his desire to see his son again that he got across in just a couple of scenes that he had, sitting in a tunnel, probably sitting in an uncomfortable position for way longer than he should have. Because I'm guessing that's the fate that befalls people like Doug Jones, especially nice ones that refuse to say when they're uncomfortable and things like that. But Absentia, his role in Absentia, I can't remember his character's name, but it was a really good role. You know, he's not one of the main characters, but when he shows up, he really affects the story.
Yeah.
And that's the sign of a really good actor. In my opinion.
I actually have a small story to piggyback off of Absentia. Doug once was doing an interview about Absentia and told that how he was able to express that deep felt emotion for his son and that longing was the actor who played the son. Before every take that Doug did, Doug would do a really big, warm bear hug with that actor, whose name unfortunately I don't remember off the top of my head. And then the actor would just leave and disappear from his sight, and so the longing would be kind of real. Like, he'd be like, "No, more hugs," and that's
cool.
how he was able to portray that particular.
See, that's
that
cool.
particular
That's
one.
I love hearing stuff like that. That actors have that, and like that's something I wouldn't have necessarily expected from a normal actor. So that's mine. Dave, what about you? Do you have one?
His non-face roles, I would say, I think he's really good. Every time you see him.
Well, why don't we do the face role first?
No, I was saying non-face
or
roles.
the non-character role. You mean?
Yeah, the non where he's behind a makeup.
Okay.
Job.
Okay.
Okay.
Because isn't that what you just said?
His face roles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are
where
his
it's
face roles.
non-creature.
Right,
Non-creature.
Yeah.
Right.
So, see, now I can't think of what he was in. He was in several shows that there was like some
You liked him in
coincidence.
Flash and Arrow.
Yeah, well, yeah. If he's in Flash and Arrow, he's great in those. Like whenever I see him in a face role, I'm always excited because I know he's got a lot to bring to that character potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And there was that one where I'll say this: he played like he was like an ice cream vendor, and he got all big and like lanky. Like, they did a little bit of special effects to him.
Legion.
Yeah. But like, oh man, I just remember that just creeped me the fuck out.
He was very Swedish.
Yeah.
When you think about it, because his limbs grew and he started like galloping like on four limbs. Super creepy.
But
awesome.
yeah, but I just remember thinking to myself, like, of everything in that movie, that's the thing that stuck with me.
That's the thing that stuck with a lot of people. Yeah, he was real creepy in that.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
And then, like I said, like every time I see him on a TV show, I'm excited. I'm like, hey, it's Doug Jones, yes.
Yeah, and I should mention I had a follow-up role that I really enjoy that he was just a face, and that was his brief appearance on the Guild. He played a steampunk guy on the Guild that Felicia runs across at a Comic-Con, and he and his partners are all steampunked out, and he affects a very like fancy voice, and he's holding up a monocle most times.
Almost British.
Oh, it's so funny. It was so funny. So that was my runner-up because he was hilarious. It was a brief role, but it was really funny, very memorable.
And that was
it was a brief show. The shows were only 10 minutes long. So.
And that was one of his main introductions to the world of steampunk, and now he loves steampunk.
Oh, really?
Like, he'll go to a bunch of red carpet stuff actually dressed in steampunk.
Oh, that's
from
cool.
Clockwork Couture.
Really?
Yeah. So it's awesome that came from that particular role.
So that was my honorable mention. Diane, what's your favorite face role of Doug Jones?
So my favorite non-creature role where you get to see Dougie's lovely face. I have two. One is a film that I highly recommend for everybody to see. It's extremely touching. And it's a role that was actually specifically written for Doug, and it's called My Name is Jerry. I think you can see it online. I think it's on Hulu or one of those. I don't think it's on Netflix.
Just Google where to look for it.
Yeah, you can Google where to look for it, but see it please because It's great.
How dare you?
I was a little late on that, sorry.
Please see My Name is Jerry. Because that character, I mean, he's the lead, and you get to see all facets of his scope of acting, from being intensely silly and crazy to being very sad and depressed and emotional, to being in love, to being very happy and free-flowing. And the story itself is about kind of reinventing yourself and finding yourself and dealing with a lot of changes in your life, and realizing that no matter how young or old you might be, you can always take life in your hands and progress forward.
Yeah.
That's one of them. The other one
I just had a quick note on that.
Yeah.
Hold that for a second. Whenever I'm on set and I'm watching an actor perform, and sometimes it's not there, but then it like goes over the edge, like you were saying, like you go from happy to sad to ecstatic to completely depressed or whatever, and he's always fun to watch in that sense.
Yes, he is, because
it really comes through.
Again, it's the versatility, right? And especially when he's doing things that are really silly. Like there's a hilarious dance scene in My Name is Jerry where he's just kind of rocking it out and going all over the place, because in the film he gets very interested in punk rock. So
I would love to see him go crazy dancing.
you need to watch it then.
So much so that it involves an idea that I actually had. Like if I were to ever try and write a movie for Doug Jones, it would be about something along those lines. But anyway, I'll save that for another time.
Has he done kids stuff, like kids movies?
Yes. He has done a couple, which I can go into that in a minute.
Okay.
But for the second favorite role, it would be his Wendigo character from an episode of Fear Itself.
That was awesome.
That character is.
They enhanced his jaw, though.
A little bit, but not a whole lot. I mean, he has some slight makeup on, but I mean, primarily it's just him, because he's so able to move his body and contort himself in those different ways that he's able to give that sort of juxtaposition look. So that character is just insanely creepy, because he'll go, again, it's the versatility of the acting, where he'll go from being, is he human still? Is he okay? Is he going to recover? To nope, he's killing everybody. And there's this one scene in particular where he appears in a barn, and I think there's like some fog behind him, and he's trying to convince his wife to come back to him and to put down the gun and not shoot him. And he's being all sweet and sincere and just being his normal voice. And then when she finally puts the gun down and he takes it from her, he then affects his voice into like this deep growl, and he gets all menacing, and he does it at the drop of a hat, and it's just so enthralling and just sends a little shiver up my spine. I love that scene.
If you guys haven't seen that episode of Fear Itself, you
can see that on YouTube.
Please do. It's so awesome. He is tremendously unnerving as the Wendigo.
Yeah, the Wendigo is just so good. It's so good. So yeah, those are my two.
All right, let's get into the makeup roles. Dave, you want to start this one?
No.
All right. Diane, you want to start this one?
I'm still trying to pick a favorite here.
All right. Yeah, no, there's a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, I definitely have to mention Abe Sapien again, because that's how I, was able to first connect with Doug, with that beautiful character, that beautiful fish man who was so intelligent and emotional and empathetic and everything. I love that role a lot. I also really like, he has so many, right? I mean, there's Billy Butcherson from one of my favorite movies of all time, Hocus Pocus.
One of my classics as well.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't watch that at Halloween time, right? I mean, grew up watching that film. And then, of course, there's like the Silver Surfer, which, again, unfortunately was not his voice, but he still provided all the body work for that and had to go through all that makeup. But I think my other favorite, aside from Abe, has to be the work he did on Pan's Labyrinth.
Well, you can't just say that. What's his favorite character? That's a pretty blanket statement.
Huh?
Which character, though?
both. I mean, the fawn probably impresses me more because the fawn, I mean, he's on stilts. Doug actually learned his lines in Spanish, a language which he does not speak, and also learned the lines for his co-stars so that he knew how he was supposed to properly react to them emotionally, and when he was, supposed to properly
that makes
reply.
sense.
Yeah, because he didn't want to just, mouth things and then have someone loop him in later. He actually went through everything,
really
so it was
cool.
genuine.
That's really cool.
Can you imagine the work?
You'd think an actor would do that. You'd hope so. But I'll bet not every actor has that commitment level.
I don't think that many people would go to that particular length. So yes, the work he did as the fawn, Elfano, on Pan's Labyrinth. I mean, yes, the Pale Man is creepy as heck, and that suit looked just horrendous to have to wear.
Yeah, it didn't look fun.
All that latex.
None of his suits really look fun.
No. But yeah, those are my choices for the creature roles.
Okay, so here are mine. And I'm not limiting it to just creatures. Could be humanoid type stuff.
Okay.
Because I want to give an honorable mention. This is not one of my favorites, but it could have been. Honorable mention to Always Watching.
Okay.
What's the rest of the title?
Always Watching a Marble Hornets story.
Which is basically a take on Slender Man.
Yeah.
And Doug got to play
operator.
the Slender Man, the operator, right?
Yeah.
And when I first heard about this, I started tweeting Doug about it. Hey, when is the Slender Man movie going to be done? And he's like, oh, keep an eye out for it. Like, one of the reasons I love Doug Jones so much is that he's one of the 8 or so celebrities that have responded to me on Twitter. And numerous times in Doug's case, because I kept checking in on this movie, because I was like, oh, I love the Slender Man mythos. I've played the games. I play survival horror games. This is right up my alley. Can't wait to see I'm like, oh my God, Doug Jones is playing the Slender Man? That's perfect. I mean,
right.
It's in the title. It's in the title. But unfortunately, it was an underwhelming picture. Like, Doug was underutilized. He was utilized mainly to stand there in most cases, and occasionally, writhe around for a weird effect, but not much of that. So it wasn't Doug's fault. I think he did a really great job as the Slender Man. I wish there was a movie that featured him more as the Slender Man.
Because it's not so much that it was a bad film, it's just that we wanted more.
Yeah.
We wanted more of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's my honorable mention. Since you picked Pan's Labyrinth, it's easier for me to go this way. I'm going to go with Hellboy 2.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with The Angel of Death.
All right.
I think that was so cool. And, I mean, it must have been such a pain in the ass. In fact, you and I watched a movie recently called Men in Suits.
Such a good documentary.
Amazing documentary
You
about
have
all
to
these
see
creature actors. Featured Doug, and it talked about, it actually featured him and Guillermo.
Yes.
And Guillermo spoke about Doug's experience in the Angel of Death suit, because the Angel of Death is this character with this interesting, almost seashell-like crest that encompassed everything above his mouth. And then he had this interesting tattered robes-ish look, but then these big-ass wings behind him. And the wings were originally attached to Doug.
Yeah.
And they were like 85 pounds, I think Guillermo said, and it started to literally make Doug bleed.
Yeah.
And of course, he couldn't have left it to Doug to say anything, because Doug wouldn't have, because that's the kind of committed actor that Doug is.
Yeah.
But
he never complains.
But they saw it, and so they suspended the wings on wire, and it's this really awesome character that, like, oh yeah, that would be the Angel of Death. But so the Angel of Death is, I think, probably my favorite, just visually. Again, because you mentioned the Fawn and the Pale Man, I love the way he acted in those. But the other one I have to mention as my runner-up would be the lead gentleman from Buffy.
Yep.
I discovered Buffy probably at about season 6, and I got all the backup seasons and watched it all. And when I got to season 4, Hush, the episode called Hush, where Doug headlined, it was a silent episode. It was because at the beginning of the episode, Doug leads 2 other gentlemen, these ghoulish skeletal creatures, but in really nice black funeral-ish suits, like glide into town because they don't touch the ground.
They're just like hovering.
They hover, and they open this box at the beginning, and it steals the voices of everyone in Sunnydale. So it's an entirely silent episode except for some sound effects and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the gentleman. I can't even remember their reasoning for stealing the voices and stuff, but it was
the reasoning is because if the gentlemen hear anyone make a noise or like scream, they die, and that's how they die at the end.
I couldn't remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really awesome role. He looked creepy. He got to play to his strengths, which are and again, in this documentary we watched, Guillermo mentions that Doug's strengths are the slow and methodical, creepy movements rather than the brutal fighting movements of certain creatures. And this really lended to that. All of the sort of glidey movements that he had in as the gentleman, because he would hover along, and you know, I love whenever Doug gets to move his fingers creepily and stuff because he's so
like
good
a
at
human
it.
like the puppeteer in the suit.
Yes.
You know, because he's doing much more than just being the creature. He's manipulating parts of the suit, and so you have to get into that mindset. And like, you guys took my favorite roles, which were Ape Sapien and the Angel of Death from Hellboy 2. So both of my roles were from Hellboy.
Okay.
And I loved him. I love him in everything he does. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, like I said, watching that creepy angel in Hellboy 2 and just thinking to myself, oh, God. And then I might have, by the time I saw Hellboy 2, I might have been able to go, I bet that's Doug Jones. Because I do sometimes look at stuff that way. I'm like, oh, okay. So there's just this random character maybe, doesn't even have a line. They're just in the background of something. And you think to yourself, like, there's probably, you know, a well-known character actor who's playing behind the mask, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I feel like that was my favorite role. But his role in Hellboy 1, because he's in it the whole movie, I think is my favorite. Because I get to see him through the whole thing, even if it's not his voice.
He actually has more screen time in Hellboy 2 as Abe. He has a more developed story.
Well, I know, but I just mean like if I had to pick. Well, I just mean that character. So he's in both those movies as, you know, one of the lead actors, and so it's fun to see him more than just the guy in the tunnel in Absentia or, you know, whatever. So
sure, no, that makes sense.
That would definitely be my favorite one. But I mean, the Hocus Pocus, of course, you know.
Billy.
There's
Yay.
Fallen Skies, which actually I just found out that he played the alien.
He played Cochise.
And I'm like,
the good alien.
Okay. I'm like, all right, I see it now. Like I wasn't thinking that before. So that's the thing, you know. A lot of our listeners might not know anything about Doug Jones, and like he's in so much stuff that you just don't. He's not the build, you know, like guy.
Yeah. He's the very character actor, and he's very good at what he does. I mean, he's top marks in my opinion. He's so good at what he does. Another
thing that he was in recently was Crimson Peak, right?
Yes.
He played 2 different characters in Crimson Peak.
Yes, and he was creepy as hell as both.
What's Crimson Peak? You lost me.
The Guillermo del Toro haunted house one that was Victorian looking and had Thor or Loki in it.
That was recent?
Yeah, that was this year.
Just a couple months ago.
It was just a couple months ago, yeah.
Came out like, what, mid-October?
Marcia and I reviewed it for the horror show.
Yeah.
So if you watched our channel, Dave, you would know.
I think I watched this crap.
I guess not. But yeah, Doug played a very motherly ghost. And then a very murdered ghost.
Very, very murdered ghost.
What did you think of Crimson Peak? Like, the movie itself was lackluster, but Doug's performances were great and super creepy. And anyone that saw the trailer where the girl was laying in bed and the black hand, the massive black hand was on her arm, that was Doug. So that was really awesome.
I really liked the whole movie. I mean, the only thing that I think is amiss is the way that the trailer was edited. That a lot of people thought, based on
ghost story.
It was going. Well, it still was a ghost story, but I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a scary horror-based story. And while there are still a couple of kind of creepy, moments, it's more about the depth of the characters, and it's very much an old school Gothic.
It's like a murder mystery.
It's a Gothic film.
Yeah.
It's a Victorian Gothic film, and it's definitely got some things that really make you wonder. And there's certain things in terms of the physical aspects, like the sets, the costuming, just all the beautiful visuals that Guillermo is so perfect at explaining. I mean, just
He's
the way the
actually the
house
best at
was.
that.
Yeah, he is just fantastic. I mean, just little
The
things
ambiance was unbelievable.
like the main character Edith. She was always, every single scene, always wearing gold and black, which was the exact same colors of the butterflies. The butterflies, which are supposed to be symbolized as beautiful and innocent and fragile. And then the others were always dressed in the grays, and they were symbolizing the moths that haunted the mansion that, were eating the butterflies as flesh. So just little things like that I thought were so clever. I loved Crimson Peak. Doug did half the ghosts, and Javier Botet, I think I pronounced his name right, did the other ghosts. Very similar build in terms of structure to Doug, and I think together they did very well with those. But yeah, I liked Crimson Peak an awful lot. I saw it a few times in the theaters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good for you. What was next on your list?
So next on my list of things that we could talk about.
Well, and I'll just tack on to the Guillermo del Toro thing.
Sure.
I honestly, I watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Worked on a couple films.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about when you meet as a director, when you meet an actor who can go places for you. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you're hoping you could just get X out of somebody, and then sometimes you're like, oh my God, you could give me X, Y, Z, and then start the whole alphabet over. And so you sort of create roles for them, other than, like for example in Hellboy, I wonder if Guillermo saw Doug Jones as, oh my God, I could have this guy as two roles. I could have him, I have so many creatures in this thing, and he can live these things and really bring them to life, because not everybody can do that.
No.
Not all actors can do that.
Yeah.
And that's what one of the things I was saying before. He's got Guillermo del Toro and definitely Doug Jones, this sort of stage feel to their films where it feels like every frame's a picture.
Right.
And there's just a complete communication between all the departments to create worlds, and I Michael Bay and Steven Spielberg, obviously they're their own versions of the same thing that I'm talking about, that sort of majestic ability to capture everything, colors when you watch a Del Toro movie, you're watching a Del Toro movie. It's like he's got a style. And I love the fact that Doug Jones is part of that in a way.
Yeah.
He seems to always get, so to me that means, like, even without ever speaking to either of them, it feels like Guillermo's finding roles to get, he's like, okay, I want Doug Jones in the movie. What can I come up for him? Okay, right. I'm going to make him a satyr, in Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're going to play this character and you don't speak Spanish, but you're going to have to learn, That's the type of thing that, I think we're definitely spotlighting when we talk about Doug Jones. He's one of those direct to famous actors. The audience, the mass media might not cover Doug Jones, but like the people in the industry, they're like, oh yeah, we know who Doug Jones is. He's amazing.
The next topic is, his role, and it can be any role that has creeped us out the most, like just scared us, creeped us.
I wonder if that bothers him. That a lot of his roles that he's remembered for, they're like, oh my God, he was so creepy. Oh my God, he turned me inside out.
He's got to take at least some semblance of pride from it.
But that's what I was just going to say. I love working at a haunted house. look, there's something about scaring people, even if it's in real life or if it's on the screen. So there's got to be that aspect to a lot of his roles, and I definitely am going to stick with Legion, the role in Legion, man.
Oh, I know which one was mine.
That's the one that got me so bad.
The Ice Cream Man was creepy as hell with the shriek that he lets out with the elongated jaw, because you know me, the elongated
like
jaws,
I know
they
there's
freak
some
me
effects
out.
there, but to me, that's the role that still to this day gives me the creeps.
All right, I'm going to go next then.
Yep.
Mine is going to be The Infected Man from Quarantine, which was the remake of the Spanish film Wreck. It's about basically it's a cross between a zombie movie and 28 Days Later. It's very fast, screaming zombies, but it's not like a rage virus. No, it's not rabies.
I thought
And
it was.
no. In fact, in Wreck 2, they discover what it is. It's actually possession. It's a demon that's transferring bodies and possessing these other people, which is one of the things I love most about this series. Quarantine didn't get a chance to go into it. They basically remade the original Wreck, but instead they got Carpenter, I forgot what her first name is, but the girl that played Dexter's sister. She was the lead reporter that went into this building with some cops that was quarantined off because there was some kind of viral outbreak. And it's these crazy, screaming, fast-moving, bloodshot-eyed zombie creatures that are attacking and eating the flesh of all these other people. And the reporter has gone in with her crew, her camera crew, and following these cops to keep her safe. And then the cops are basically immediately decimated. The girl has to survive to the end of the movie, which she does, and she makes it to this top floor apartment where everything seems to be sort of originating from. And she goes in, and it's completely pitch black, so she switches to night vision on her camera, and she's walking around looking at all this stuff, and she sees all these articles and stuff having to do with religion and things like that. And basically, as she's walking around, the camera spots that there's something moving around in the room with her. And it's something tall, and it's something lanky, and it's something naked, and it looks like a woman because it's got these droopy tits, but it's like, it could just be like...
No, it's a man.
I know, but it's like, it's so creepy looking. It's like these extra flesh. It's, again, if I lost 100 pounds, that's what I would look like.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, but it was so creepy, and he would like sort of meander around and like sort of walk with his arms swinging almost ape-like because they would just hang limply beside him, and he would hold this hammer, and he would use the hammer and whack, and like, and he was just so awesomely creepy and absent-minded with his evilness almost,
Yeah.
like it was so awesome. It sticks with me as one of just the creepiest visuals of something that could be after you in the night. Like, he would scare me more than Freddy, Jason, Chucky, any of those. If that entity, the infected thin guy or whatever they call it, was after me, I would be freaked the fuck out. Oh my god. So that's mine.
All right, so mine is more a little bit non-conventional. He has done all these different creature roles, all these different monsters, and yet the one that creeps me out the most is not a monster. Not a monster in sense of physical. Mine is more on an emotional, slightly realistic scale in that he did, I guess you would call it more like a cameo role in an episode of Sons of Anarchy.
Okay.
And he's a prison guard. And let me preface by saying I haven't watched Sons of Anarchy, but I watched this episode just because it was Doug and Ron Perlman together. So you've got Abe and Hellboy reunited. And the scene is that Ron Perlman's character, whose name escapes me at the moment, is in this prison. And if I remember right, his wife or girlfriend, this woman comes to visit him and give him some vital information on what's going on. And while she's in there talking with him, she goes to leave, and in walk these two prison guards, and Doug is one of these two guards. They lock the door behind them, and Doug goes over and starts beating the crap out of Ron with his baton, and then they hit her too, and then they sit down and they start undoing their pants and unbuckling and making gestures and different discriminatory talking, and they force them to have sex in front of them for their personal pleasure, and that creeped me out way more than any of his like monster creature stuff. The fact that Doug, who is like the nicest guy, the most clean-cut, sweetheart, lovely individual you'll ever meet, acting as this vile, sinister, derogatory guy who wants to force people to have sex for him. Like, that was just, oh gosh. That creeped me out so much. Just that, and he did it so well. It was so believable. And again, that really speaks to his tremendous acting ability to portray that in such a believable, realistic fashion that it really unnerved me.
And what about creature?
In terms of like a creature, I mean, yes, I agree on your guys's what you guys have said. I mean, I think maybe his character, his vampire from The Strain.
Yep.
He played the original master. He also plays one of the ancients, but the original master role he did, where he's just kind of crouching over this body, and then he kills this big character. Again, the character's name escapes me, and then just leaps on top of him and opens his mouth, and all these lovely worms and everything just goes to him, and he shoves dirt in his mouth. The way that he did that, again, directed by Guillermo for that particular scene, that was also just so good and so creepy. So
yeah, his characters in that I like that show a lot. So
it's a good show.
Yeah, it's definitely good. So what was the next one? We should probably think about winding it down pretty quick.
Yeah. So the next subject, I would say, is let's mention some of Doug's upcoming works. So.
Well, I'm excited for Nosferatu.
Yeah, for Nosferatu for sure.
Yeah. What are some of the other ones?
So some of the other things that he's got coming up is he's been doing a lot of independent work lately. So there's one in particular that I'm really excited for because I think it's going to have the same level of emotional depth as My Name is Jerry, and this one is called My Friend Max. He's got kind of a creepy one called Kiss the Devil in the Dark coming up, where that's about the demon Dagon. Dagon? Something like that. But he also plays a non-creature role named Terrence in that too. He's going to be in a couple sci-fi things called Fifth Passenger, as well as Zero, Dawn of the Dark Lighters, which is going to be more of a voice role where he does like a robot. There's going to be a really great creepy horror film, aside from Nosferatu, called Gehenna, Where Death Lives. That just got finished filming a couple weeks ago. Which I think for your show, you guys will really be keen for that.
Cool.
Nobility, a sci-fi show, Space Command, and then he also very recently got done filming another horror full feature film where he plays the lead, called The Bye Bye Man.
Cool.
So he's got a lot of stuff come up, and that's only part of it too. There's more, but those are some of like the bigger things coming up.
Well, I'm excited to see him in anything. I mean, honestly, so. I would be hard pressed to narrow it down to anything in particular. I'm always excited. Nosferatu will be really cool. I never saw the original, so it'll be interesting. It'll be neat to go into this cold. Honestly, I don't want to watch the original at this point since I haven't yet.
I think you should.
Nope. I just want to watch it for what it is first, and maybe I'll watch it afterwards.
Okay.
But I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see the Bye Bye Man. Is that what it
The
is?
Bye Bye Man, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that.
I'm really excited for that one.
You know, it's a shame that Doug maybe might get typecast as like the creepy guy or whatever sometimes, but he's so good at it. You know, I love seeing him that way. So I don't know. I will be there for anything that he does going forward, and I'll always be pleasantly surprised when he pops up on any of my shows like Flash or Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. So,
and if anyone wants to follow Doug, I mean, there's a myriad of ways that people can kind of stay in touch with what he's doing and where he's going. He has an Instagram, Actor Doug Jones, a Twitter, Actor Doug Jones, a Facebook page, also Actor Doug Jones. He's
got that on lock.
Yeah, he also has a Tumblr, same thing, and he has an official website. So you can definitely follow him and keep up to date. He posts a lot of funny pictures and stuff, and he sometimes answers people's questions and whatnot. He's very interactive on the social medias, on the Webernets. But I will say that, you know, we are based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and we together are vying very hard for Doug to come out for Arizona's biggest convention, which is called Phoenix Comic-Con.
Yeah. Our horror show had a booth there last year, and we're seeing about maybe getting a booth there this year. But even if not, we're going to be helping out with some of the horror programming. Hopefully, we've been in contact with the people at Phoenix Comic-Con about having us perhaps doing a or multiple panels. And I would like to see if we can't connect Phoenix Comic-Con with Mr. Jones to see if we can bring him out, because I mean, he's an actor that would have a huge line, I think. I mean, everyone knows him, and he's an awesome guy. You said he gives time to his fans, so I think he'd be a big, big win for the con, and worth every penny that the con might have to take out of their budget to bring him in. Because he is, I mean, I would love to see him, and I'm damn sure I wouldn't be the only one. So we'll be in contact with him, but I wholly think that they should bring him out, and then if I can be so bold, I wholly think that we should be allowed to do a panel, a horror show panel, spotlighting Doug Jones and talking to him about all of his stuff and getting some awesome stories straight from Mr. Jones's mouth.
So I personally have been in contact with the directors who are working with guest programming, and so at this moment, they've been given his appearance manager's information. We really want him to come out, but part of the thing is that for anyone listening to this podcast, I mean, if you've ever wanted to meet Doug, or even if after listening to this you're like, and you hadn't heard of him prior and now you would like to, please contact PCC, Phoenix Comic-Con, and let them know that you would like to have Doug come out, because the more people we get asking for him to come, and the more people who show interest, the more likely they are to connect and to bring him out, because he wants to come.
Well, you know, I know what's kind of neat about Doug Jones. Like, if you like to get an autograph and a picture or whatever, you could bring him 40 different pictures from roles that he's played to you know, like, there's been so many that are so fun and cool.
Yeah, you can bring any one of those.
Well, he has
There's
pictures.
some huge movies like Silver Surfer and Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth, and, you know, God, I was going through it earlier, like Hocus Pocus. I mean, you know, he's been in a lot of these great things, and most of the time he's, you know, less than recognizable. Unless you're a fan, then you recognize him.
I will say this: if he comes out and you get the chance to meet him, whether it's at this con or any other convention, there's not going to be an experience quite like it. He really will make it memorable and a highlight of your convention.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that.
Well, we saw the Hellboy panel at Comic-Con, and he was there for Hellboy.
Yeah.
Or if it was Hellboy too? No, it was Hellboy.
It was one of them, but Guillermo was a foul-mouthed dude.
At San Diego, right?
Yeah. We went to San Diego. That was a great panel, though. That was awesome. That was one of our first panels, I think, if I recall correctly.
So get your tweets out, folks. Let's get Doug Jones to Phoenix Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Definitely contact them.
Hashtag bring Doug Jones to PCC 2016.
Yes, please, because we want him to come. He wants to come. let's make it happen while his schedule allows.
Absolutely. So I think that'll just about cover it for this episode of the Horror Show podcast, spotlighting the amazing and talented and uber fantastic Mr. Doug Jones.
Yay!
Thanks for listening. I've been Cecil Laird.
Producer Dave.
And I am Diane Shreve.
And until next time, remember,
Stay
scared.